It began as an ordinary week. One event slightly out of the routine was that a spaceship was to lift a teacher into orbit for the first time. At 11:39 and 13 seconds on Tuesday morning, it was still an ordinary week. At 11:39 and 20 seconds, everything was changed. The morning had burst apart before our eyes. What was left of the proudest moment in a good many lives was a twisting trail of smoke and some pieces falling into the sea. And shock and grief. We watched it happen, and we watched ourselves watching it happen.
Obviously a major malfunction.
It was worse for the families and neighbors and friends, but the country shared the grief. The country, at a loss for words, tried to find some.
God, I watched it. I cried. I couldn't believe it.
I don't know of any time that I have been more shocked or more moved than when my first wife was killed in an automobile accident.
It's frightening.
It was just awful. Just awful.
It's just like, you know, losing a member of your family.
I think it's a tragedy for not only for American people, but all the people in the world, I think.
We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
And there were tributes and mourning without words. The missing man formation. In this case, 2 women and 5 men missing.
You have to risk something to gain something, and the risk and the gain are worth it to me.
Those missing are Dick Scobie, commander of the Challenger, and pilot Mike Smith, Judy Resnick, Ellison Onizuka, Greg Jarvis, Ron McNair, and Krista McAuliffe, the school teacher from Concord, New Hampshire, who was chosen from 11,000 applicants and 10 finalists to be the first teacher in space.
When that shuttle goes, there might be one body. But there's going to be 10 souls that I'm taking with me.
She took with her a part of a lot of people.
Every piece we pick out of the water hurts a little. It's not an easy task.
The Atlantic has yielded clues, but no real answer to the question why. Photos show a flame bursting from one of the rocket boosters seconds before the explosion. Ronald Reagan, Jake Garn, and John Glenn all said yes.
We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue.
Well, I have great confidence in the space program. I think it's a remarkable system, and I think we should push ahead after we have determined the cause.
So I guess we could say that these 7 that went up this morning carried the hopes and the dreams of all of us. And what we can do now is make sure that we carry their memories in carrying on.
There could be no better example of carrying memories by carrying on than one which may be found at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. George Herman reports our cover story, Up from the Ashes.
Who became the focus of American heartbreak last Tuesday. This was not some convenient media device. It seemed inevitable. The television networks and the newspapers did their best, I thought, to treat the 7 Challenger victims with equal respect, to pronounce each name, to render each likeness, to honor equally the memories and the heroism of all the dead. But still, it was the school teacher, above all the rest, who crystallized the horror and the grief. And if her special status in the tragedy seems a cruel example of the oversimplifying media, it might also contain the seeds of redemption from the catastrophe. It is the school teacher, after all, who compels us to seek lessons.
I would like to humanize the space age by giving a perspective from a non-astronaut, because I think the students will look at that and say, this is an ordinary person. This ordinary person is contributing to history, and if they can make that connection, then they're going to get excited about history, they're going to get excited about the future, they're going to get excited about space.
Krista McAuliffe's presence made teachers of the entire Challenger crew. Their mission, in part, was to turn Challenger into a science classroom for a nation of school children watching on television. The special agony last week lay in imagining how this young audience felt when the teacher and her companions perished before their eyes. Redemption might lie in persuading these children that their teacher's mission was not in vain. That's a lesson. Another deeply ironic lesson involves the growing power of public relations. It was public relations that created Krista McAuliffe as a national celebrity, a teacher in space, following a senator in space, and preceding journalists in space. NASA was trying to create the perception that its space shuttle program is routine, domesticated, a perfected technology, and a harbinger of further triumphs to come. Obviously, it isn't. The lesson: discuss image making as opposed to educating. And speaking of educating, what was the lesson of Krista McAuliffe as a role model for a forgotten profession? Teachers have all but disappeared from television's agenda. News, talk shows, documentaries. They don't even make it in primetime series anymore. This in an age of cynicism and crisis over public education.